Kelvin Andrews, Subculture Snapshot, 1 hour special.
I've always been fascinated by subcultures. Growing up in the 1970s and 80s was no doubt for me a massive adventure. Music and style tribes were absolutely everywhere. Like a lot of kids, despite the challenges of youth unemployment, racism and potential violence, they were still tremendously exciting times to be young, into music and style. The very first time I became aware of a tribal style was witnessing an immaculately groomed skinhead dancing unself-consciously by his back door at the bottom of Bouverie Parade. I can still remember the shine on his cherry red Doc Marten boots, the turn-ups on his jeans and braces. I was fascinated. Booming out the house was GG All-Star's 2,000 Tons of TNT. I remember loving the sound of the flute, so I stopped outside gawping as only a 7-year-old can. The reason I know the track is because when the music stopped, he went inside and got the record to show me. He had one of those old school 45 RPM singles boxes, and I can also remember seeing the now iconic orange and white Trojan label on some of the 45s. It remains a top memory. At that point, of course, I had no idea the music was from Jamaica. The truth being, I had no idea what Jamaica was. The music, though, was irresistible. And the look, well, let's just say I was impressed. In London's Notting Hill, Caribbean music, culture and style had been well established since the early 1950s, and those influences were soon evident in British subcultures. Here's DJ icon Norman J, MBE.
I was too young to be a mod, but all the older kids that lived on my street, they were mods, scooter boys, and they all loved blue beat, ska and jazz. Black music. Yeah, they liked the pop music as well, but they liked the sort of music I didn't know at the time, which went on to be known as Northern Soul. They liked a lot of obscure 60s black music, which I had no idea. I didn't even know some of the singers were black until probably about 10 years later, when I was old enough to understand a bit more of the history of our music. From the late 60s onwards to the early 70s, I was reggae all the way, but still buying what I called pocket money soul, because I didn't have a lot of money in those days. All my paper around, 15 bob a week, 75p a week. That just about bought me 2 singles.
Back then, in urban and provincial Britain, there was always a touch of danger if you expressed your allegiance, especially being a boy. I grew up in Stoke, and I have a vivid memory of seeing a flame-haired Ziggy clone in a lime green bomber, high-waisted grey Oxford bags, and impossibly stacked wedge platform boots, being chased across Reppington Road by a trio of Neanderthal boneheads in faded denim and DMs. Get the fucking queer bastard! I was about 8 or 9. What's a queer? I thought. What's a bastard? I continued, gripped by the chase unfolding before me. What happened next I'll never forget. The Bowie kid, not really equipped for sprint training, tripped and rolled over with the chasing yobs almost upon him, and somehow sprang to his feet with no choice but to face the pursuing enemy. Incredibly, he took a swing at the biggest youth and knocked him clean over. This had the effect of freezing the other two in their tracks, and all of a sudden, with the next bonehead being the recipient of a swift and devastating kick to the crown jewels, the stakes were reversed, and with 2 on the ground, the third was now legging it towards the swings, with Ziggy in hot pursuit. Back in the early to mid-70s, pop music would still have the power to ignite a rabid subculture overnight, with Top of the Pops often attracting over 15 million viewers. Even young teenage girls could have a taste of tribal mayhem. Here's author of the brilliant book Adventures in Wonderland and former editor of The Face, Cheryl Garrett.
We had one summer where it felt like being female, you had to be a Bay City Roller fan. I loved that summer, and we went to see them at the Odeon New Street in Birmingham. That was the first live gig I'd ever been, and I just remember the bus ride. Boys who've gone to football will know about this, but getting on the bus and just owning the bus and singing Bay City Roller songs, and I'd never experienced that before. And then we got off the bus and pelted down New Street, and there was this big row of police, and you could just see the fear on their faces as all these kind of 13-year-old girls stampeded towards them, and it was great. I don't remember much of the gig, but I remember just being part of a really big gang and how great that felt.
In the next episode of Subculture Snapshot, we'll take a look at what came next.
Written and produced by Kelvin Andrews, with special thanks to Danny Spencer.